I kind of wanted to start out our webinar today by giving you a little rundown kind of on Reviewer, why we're hosting this webinar, and overall our topic today. So, for those of you that might not know, Reviewer is an applicant management platform. So, essentially, any program where you are intaking any kind of application and it's going through a judging or review process, we can run it within Reviewer. So, we run everything from grants to scholarships to different award programs, competitions, call for speakers, call for abstracts, all sorts of different things kind of in that nature. So, yeah, if it is an application in a judging process, then we can run it. And over the years, here at Reviewer, we have ran thousands of different grant programs. So we have kind of compiled a lot of things that we have seen work really well, and then a lot of issues that we've seen a lot of programs run into to kind of bring you today's webinar topic, which is your grant program set up for success, or is it set up to struggle along your process? So, with that being said, my name is Callie. I run all of our marketing here at Reviewer. So, my role in this webinar is just to kind of give you guys some insights and some things we've been seeing in the grant space in general. And then I have Holly here from my team, and I will let her introduce herself.
Yeah, I'm Hallie. I'm a part of the customer success team here at Reviewers. So I work with all of our clients kind of one-on-one from the time they are onboarded and they get their kind of feet into Reviewer. I help them get their event going, submissions, evaluation process, and then kind of help close things up for next year's event, help them make edits and kind of get things ready. So I kind of have that insider perspective of understanding why clients are coming to a Reviewer, what their frustrations and issues are with past platforms, processes, however they're kind of running their grants in the past. And then kind of seeing what they're looking for and what they're seeing succeed and be helpful through Reviewer. So I just kind of have that client inside perspective of kind of understanding what they need, what they're looking for, that sort of thing.
All right. And I did want to note before we get started here, the chat is open. So if you have questions as we're going along, feel free to drop them in the chat. But with that being said, we will jump right into it. Okay, so first we kind of wanted to start with just kind of some of the overall problems that we see, and then some ways that programs can be built for success. So overall, most of the problems that you see listed here all have to do with manual processes. So that is lots of times we see different tools hacked together. You might be using spreadsheets, you might be emailing things back and forth. You have 10 Google Docs or different Word documents, folders, everything kind of compiled together to form your program, all the way down to people who may possibly doing mailing things, paper and pen, and everything manual within that. And kind of what we are wanting to move towards and what we see programs be most successful with is having everything within one spot. So that is your applications, your all of your admin tracking, your judging and reviewing, and then when everything is over, all of your reporting. So to kind of give you a little scope of how our webinar is going to kind of play out today, we are going to start with giving you kind of the real cost of disconnected tools, and then the life cycle gap, kind of some gaps in your programs that you may not see. And then we will finish off with kind of a framework to kind of combat some of these issues that we'll go over, and some tips and tricks and things that we have seen work really successful for lots of clients and lots of just programs in the grant space in general. So we are going to jump into our first pillar, which is the real cost of disconnected tools.
Yeah, so getting started, we can kind of talk about some of the things that are causing that disconnect in using your tools as you're kind of running that grant program. So right now, what we see a lot of admin who are coming in from past grant kind of times, we see a time drain. So that's going to be for you as an admin, kind of spending far too much time actually getting your event set up, kind of figuring out your last minute pieces, bringing everything together. And that's on the time that you're spending to just get things set up, but then also as you're intaking applications and then as you're getting ready to review. So it's not just kind of one part of your grant process that's taking too much time, it's all of it. And we know that a lot of our clients, a lot of our admin who are running these grants, that's not your main job. It's something that you're kind of doing on the side. It's something that you're being added on. It's not going to be your typical 8 to 5, 9 to 5 job. And so we understand that you can't be spending 20 hours a week on getting your grant program up and running. And with a lot of that comes that kind of manual back end kind of thing. So really kind of automating that and trying to give you a more efficient process for your grants. Second is proposal abandonment. So kind of stepping away from that admin side of things, but you as admin are kind of seeing and reaping the effects of it, is we have so many applicants who are coming in and starting to fill out those grants, and then they simply just don't finish it, whether that means that they start it, their progress doesn't save, and it's not going to they're not going to come back in and fill that out if they have to start fresh every single time. Especially with grants, a lot of times you're having to get financial information, tax forms, banking, kind of internal things that maybe a lot of people don't have direct access to, or it's not something they can just go click and download. And so having the ability for your applicants to kind of come back in, save your progress, pick up where they left off, that's gonna kind of up your numbers, because right now we're seeing people who don't kind of have that ability or are having super complex, not intuitive forms. We see a lot of applications that are started, but at the end of the day, that doesn't matter. We care about how many finish. Third thing is reviewer fatigue, kind of going on that same tangent about how you running this grant is probably not your main job. Your volunteers who are coming in reviewing these grant applications, they are just that. They 90% of the time are volunteers who are coming in and donating their time to make these evaluations, make these decisions for you. And so when we don't have a really good process, it's frustrating. It's not intuitive for those volunteers, those reviewers. That's not a great experience, and that's not helping push them to come back into your event and continue to do it year after year. Another side of that is just kind of the word of mouth. If you have your reviewers, your volunteers going around saying, you know what, that process was not great, it was not intuitive, and that gets spread, that goes to not only other potential reviewer volunteers, but also to applicants. Another main one right here is no visibility. So you spend all this back end time kind of getting your grant event up and running, but then once it's going, you have no visibility as to how many applications have started, how many have finished, how many are in incomplete status, how many have finished but maybe didn't send you all the documents. So really kind of without having everything in one place and having full visibility on every single application, there's no way for you guys as admin to be able to determine those kind of numbers, which is really important to kind of keep track of those, because then you also can track that from year to year and kind of see what you need to improve on, what kind of systems are being better. And with a lot of the other platforms that you're using, if you're simply just getting emails and maybe a Google form submission, there's no visibility on who has submitted their 2 references, who has submitted the main form, and who has sent me a headshot. Keeping track of all that is really a hassle, and again, adds time for you as admin. It's frustrating for the applicant because they have no idea if all of their things have been submitted, if you've received it all. Not a great process for anyone. Repeated rework. So every year you are starting from scratch building your grant event. You might have kind of the bones of what happened last year, but any configuration, edits, things like that, you have to start from scratch. Which is super frustrating to not be able to just copy over your exact form. All configurations move forward. You have to start from scratch every year. Program integrity. This is a really big one, especially as we're kind of getting even more technologically advanced, which is not going to be going away anytime soon. Making sure that our applicants' data, information, files, especially for grants, that financial information, tax forms, making sure that that's all secure is super, super important. And what's being shared from email to email forwarded, that's not a secure process, and that's not safe or fair to your applicants. And then the last thing, but one of the most important, is impact reporting. So especially for grants, you are giving out all this money in grants, giving it out, telling your community, hey, we gave out $100,000 in grants this year. That's great, but then the community wants to know more. What were those grants going towards? How has that actually impacted those who have received them? How is that then impacting our community? That this was given out. So kind of having a way to kind of back up what you're doing as an organization. And then the last thing kind of going along with this pillar is the hidden cost of disconnected tools. So we kind of talked about a lot of the things that are causing issues, disconnect within your grant program. What we didn't talk about is the cost that that actually is creating. So while you might not be spending a lot of money on a program platform, anything like that to kind of help you out with your grant process, the amount of time and hours that you are spending a week on top of your additional job, that's kind of an opportunity cost. Proposal abandonment, that's a waste of your time and energy when half of your applications are not finishing and submitting. Review cycles, again, kind of a waste of time for you as an admin and for those reviewers when their process is not good and they're spending an extra amount of time on that review cycle. And then when you have no real-time reporting, how do you kind of prove and show impact from your cycle?
All right, now we are going to move into our second pillar, which is the life cycle gap most programs don't see. So this is kind of picking out some of the pieces that we may not be focusing on within our programs. So here is kind of the whole life cycle of your program. Typically, we see it starts with your proposals or your applications. Then we move on to reviewing and scoring, and then selection. You pick and award your winners. So typically, that is sometimes where we see kind of programs stop. You just select your winners, you dispute or distribute the payments, and that is kind of the end of it. But we want to look at the grant life cycle as a whole. So that is starting all the way at their application into reviewing selection, disbursement of payments, and then your compliance and reporting features, and then ending with that measuring impact that Hallie kind of talked about. So piecing all of those together to create the full life cycle. So kind of within that, there are kind of a few places where we see programs fall apart within that life cycle. The first one being no operations command center. So that is no place where you can kind of keep up to date on where everything lies and where everything is at within your program. The second one is the grantee experience is just a form, um, so not giving them the option to kind of upload things, build their own profile, communicate with them within. It's just a form for them. Typically, we see things like Google Forms or Jot forms being used. And typically, the issue with that, as we kind of move into post award and compliance down here, is once that sensitive data is kind of taken and putting into Jot form or Google Forms, different form platforms like that. Just being able to keep their data secure at that point is kind of beyond you. You have no control over where that data is going, especially if you're collecting things like tax documents, personal information on organizations, or personal information on people in general. That can kind of become unsafe for your applicants. The next one is the review that doesn't hold up. So again, that's your spreadsheets, not fair rubrics across the board. You might have judges using different rubrics. One thing we also commonly see in rubrics is you might have your judges rate from 1 to 5. Typically, the issue we see with a 1 to 5 scale is my version of a 4 and Hallie's version of a 4 might mean something completely different. So kind of having those discrepancies within your scores. The next one is not being able to redact any data. If you are collecting sensitive data or you don't know want your judges or review team to see which organization or which person they are reviewing, being able to hide that can be super important. And then no score normalization. So normalization is the issue of I might be a really tough judge and Hallie might be a very easy judge. Obviously, if you're an applicant, you want Hallie to score you, not me, because I judge a lot tougher. So not having any setup to normalize that score can cause some issues. And then not having the ability to have a multi-stage process if that's something your organization is kind of looking for. The next gap or piece that we kind of see is communication falls through the cracks. So when things are going through email, we oftentimes see when submissions are coming through email that sometimes they get missed. Sometimes things go to spam folders. And are just never seen. So relying on email alone as communication can cause a lot of issues within your process just for things getting to judges, applicants, things like that, it kind of just turns into a little bit of chaos. And then the next thing is post awards and compliance. So this is after you've kind of sent out who your recipients are, being able to kind of capture different things from them. If you don't have a process for that, that can be really difficult. If you don't have a place where they can go and upload maybe their W-9s or different banking details or information that you might need. And then the last one is impact you can't prove. I know we've kind of touched on that, but that is just what are these grants actually doing?
Yeah, so kind of the last thing we will talk about is a practical framework for what you need. So this is kind of putting one and two together and kind of showing you some of those solutions of those problems that we kind of just discussed. So the first thing is going to be for your proposal and intake. So this is kind of more applicant based, but then also for you as an admin, having the entire aspect, all parts of your form in one place is super important. A, for the applicant, because they can log in, enter all their information, invite those references in, submit, and be done with it. They'll get those reminder emails, they'll know, kind of understanding that everything is just in one place, which is a really great experience for the applicant. For you as an admin, really great experience as well, because you don't have to search for anything. Everything that they have submitted, that they have requested will be all in one place, which is going to save you a lot of time. And then to take it even a step further for your reviewers, for those volunteers who are coming in and evaluating for you, everything again is in one place. They don't have to pull up 8 different tabs. They will have one screen where the submission and evaluation card will be right next to each other, and they can have that experience of that proposal being in one place. Super simple, super easy. Second thing is the operational command center. This is really important for you as admin, and I think that's something that is overlooked a lot, is just kind of being able to have visibility where you can go and get a quick view and kind of get some answers. So if you have a boss or a leader who is asking, hey, what's the status of these grant applications? How many do we have and how many days are left? Having that one-page clear visibility of this is how many applications we have so far. This is the status of those applications. There's this many days left, and this is our upcoming deadline. Kind of having that all-in-one visibility is really important to kind of have in there. Review and scoring. This is another really important part that gets overlooked a lot. I see a lot of clients coming in where they don't have a scorecard for their reviewers. So the reviewers basically just look at a handful of applications, say, yep, we like them, no, they don't, or I'm going to rate this a 9 out of 10, and Callie rates it an 18 out of 25, right? That's not even, that's not comparable. That makes it really difficult for you on an admin to try and kind of match those up. And so having scorecards that are equal to everyone who is kind of filling out that evaluation, which then gives all applications that same fair chance. And then also just kind of what I touched on earlier, it's a really easy and intuitive process for your reviewers to log in, see those submissions, evaluate. They have a little tracker. They have great visibility and access to that. Communication. This is another really big one, admin, that's kind of going to take away from that 20+ hours you're spending on a week setting up that grant program. All emails that need to be sent out kind of on command to your applicants will be sent out automatically. So a submission confirmation message, an incomplete submission reminder. There is a submission redirect. So once your submitters click submit, they will be redirected to a thank you page for kind of that extra confirmation that I have submitted my form. Thank you. This is your contact information. Really important just to kind of keep them informed. And that's not something you as admin have to do manually on the back end. It's done for you. And then with that, if there is kind of a group of people that you need to email, reach out to, you can create email templates, do a bulk email, things like that. And it's not going to be from your individual email, which is also really important. And then post award and compliance. So having that ability to set up your impact reports to kind of do post award follow-ups. You have your compliance, everything is kind of in one place and secure. And then the last thing, which we've talked quite a bit about, is reporting and impact. So not only are we going to be looking at the impact, we're going to make those grantees come back in and submit an impact report. So what was this money used towards? How did that impact your grant, your mission, that kind of thing? But then you also are going to be able to have reports of how many applications you've had, how many were incomplete at the end of the process, how many did we have in each individual category? So how can we better the other ones? Kind of just a really great overview of kind of how your award cycle went. Grant cycle, excuse me. Perfect. And then I am going to just kind of share my screen, and I'm going to show you guys kind of what the reviewer process looks like kind of from start to finish. So I'm going to start out with the applicant experience. So a lot of times what our clients do is they post the microsite URL either on their website, on social media, throughout their organization. However you kind of get that out to your niche of people that you would like to apply, that's how you post it out. Will be taken to your microsite, and then they will create an account. Creating an account is a really important process of reviewer. Everyone who makes an application has to create an account. And that is a really great process because that's what gives them the ability to come in, and they have that ability to save and log out so that when they are finished, they have X amount of pages left to do. They can click save and log out, come back in later, and all of their progress will be saved. This, for example, is kind of a nominator nominee event. So I'm going to go forward just a little bit. And then we'll kind of have an example of an actual application process. So, for grants, I know a lot of you guys are going to be running some eligibility, like you have to have a minimum income. You have to be this kind of organization, anything like that. We can set up all eligibility, meaning that we ask a series of questions, and if they are eligible, they get to move forward and complete that form. But if they are not, they're going to be taken to an ineligible page and be forced to exit the form. So a really great way, again, to just kind of keep your submissions organized. Because then you know who has not submitted and who is able to actually move forward through that forms process. Some other kind of things I just want to mention on here. Down here, for example, we have that secure file upload. So they upload, and then that is secure and safe in reviewer system. That is also only accessible to admin until it's time for the review process. But if it is something like tax documents, things like that, that you don't feel necessary for the reviewer to review, we can hide and redact any of the data within the form. Yeah, so this is just kind of an example of what that review process looks like. And then I am going to move down, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the admin side of things. So this right here is what we call the admin dashboard. And so here's where you kind of get that quick visibility of how many days are left, how many total entries, and what is the status of all these entries. We use statuses a lot at Reviewer because it's a really great way to organize your submissions based on kind of where they're at. So ready is typically what the status is on submit. Incomplete and new means that they have not finished. Accepted is where we move our submissions once it's time to review. So you just have a really clear, organized view of all of your submissions. Also, a lot of people do kind of custom dates and deadlines. So if you want to have milestones throughout your grant application process, anything can kind of be displayed down here on top of just your typical live date, submission deadline, review date, things like that. So a great way to kind of get insight of that sort of thing. The next thing, so that's kind of for a quick view, but also you as admin, you're going to want to get a little bit more of an in-depth view. So this is that manage submissions page. And this is where you can see all submissions that have started, create an account, or submitted within Reviewer, within your event. And so you can see kind of here that you have a little bit of customization with your submission name, your organization, kind of the things that are in that, in those columns to kind of help differ and separate out your submissions. So you can have kind of more of that specific view of them. With that, you also have the ability to actually view submissions. And so you can see their entire submission form. And then you also have access to adding comments, and that can communicate with the submitter. You also can do notes that's just visible to other admin reviewers if you turn that on. Attachments tab. So sometimes we have admin come in later and add additional attachments that maybe they add on their end. Or if you just want to kind of see what their forms that they have uploaded look like, you have that ability as well. And then supplemental forms. So if you were to have a supplemental form, that is where you would be able to see that. Next thing I kind of want to go through on the admin side of things is your review process. So we use groups and divisions to kind of categorize all of our submissions and sort them out based on how you're going to review them. So groups is kind of that big main thing. So if you are doing multiple grants within one event, or if you are separating by region, anything like that, we can separate and auto group by that. And then based on that, we can also kind of set up our assignments. So we can either do auto assign, we can do assign all, or we can do manual assign. So auto assign is what's going to pop up right here, where you set a maximum and minimum number of times that a submission should be reviewed. And then it will randomly assign based on that. Assigning all is going to assign all judges in the group to all submissions in the group to review. And then the manual assign means that you would be manually matching up the assignments of who is going to judge what submission. And then last couple things here, this is the evaluation experience. So your submitters will, or excuse me, your reviewers will get an invite email in their inbox. They will click this link to go create an account. They will set a password and they'll log in and they will be taken to their evaluator dashboard. And so down here, you can see all of their submissions that they have to review. If they were to be done, you can see the scores that they gave everyone. If you do want to hide name, contact information, anything like that, you have that ability there where you can redact that information. And then this is kind of what that evaluation process looks like. So over here, we have that entire submission form. And then over here, we have that evaluation scorecard where they're kind of rating their evaluation or the submission. Something that we do try and get away from, and this is not a great example, is this number scoring. We find that a better way to kind of get a more fair evaluation is if we do kind of more emotional based responses. So where your 5 or your 10 is exceeds expectations and your does not meet expectations is a 0, if that makes sense. Just because it's kind of gives a little bit more of an even playing field and kind of helps get away from that kind of number bias of whose opinion of a 6 or 7 is more accurate, right? And then the last thing I wanted to show you is that normalization report, which is really important. Also a thing that you can do here is you can see your results. And so when you see each submission here, you can see the score that they got. And so you have the opportunity to see if there's any outliers in the group. If we see that someone got on average 30s and 20s on their score, and then we see, for example, a 12 here, you have the opportunity to reach out to the reviewer. Was this a misclick, typo? What is your reasoning for this score? And then for normalization, what it is a Excel downloadable spreadsheet where it will kind of give you your answers. So over here on the left, we have all of our submissions. Up here on the top kind of second row, we have all of our judges. And then the columns that are kind of corresponding are going to be the score that each judge gave each submission. Over here, we have the average score that each judge gave each submission, which obviously kind of shows a little bit of difference. We have our judge Judy over here who gave an average score of about a 24, and then Tony who gave an average score of about a 34. So naturally, if I'm a submitter, I want Judge Tony to be judging mine because he gives out higher scores. With the normalization report, not really, because each of these average numbers become a 1. So then anything above a 34 for Tony or above a 23 for Judge Judy becomes a 1.1 or a 1.5, whatever the math ends up to be. And so that shows that it is an above average submission for them. And then it kind of goes based on that and not necessarily the actual point values that were originally given. That helps just kind of to weed out the bias of numbers and scoring, tough judges versus easy judges, that kind of thing. And that's kind of just a quick little overview of what the submitters process, admin process, and reviewer process looks like. There obviously is a little bit more, there's more things to it, but that's kind of a quick overview of what some of those things look like for you.
All right. So now we kind of have laid out for you just some questions. If you are exploring a new platform or if you are thinking about the current platform that you have, we have just some questions laid out for you to kind of ask what you should be asking when looking for a platform, about the platform in general, and then about the partnership. So, some of them that kind of stand out in the about the platform is what is happening to the applicants and grantees' sensitive data? So once it's going into that platform, what is happening to it? Are they using it for anything? Is it being sold? Is it able to be used or kind of moved around? That's a great question to ask, especially if you're using multiple tools to kind of put your program together, especially if you are putting any of your applicants' data into, say, ChatGPT or anything like that to kind of help you organize and stuff like that. The real question is, where is that data going once it is entered into AI? Another good question is it all in one tool? Can you manage everything in one place, or do you kind of have to use multiple different tools to um, operate? And then about the partnership in general, what does ongoing support look like? Are you talking to just an AI chatbot or are you able to talk to a real person? Are you putting in tickets? Kind of what does that look like when you run into issues within your program? And then another great question to kind of ask is what are the most common support questions people might have or issues they come across. And then also who in our space is using the platform. So within your industry, who is using it and how are they best using it? That can kind of help you gauge where you fit in within that platform. And to kind of help out with this, we built a little bit of a checklist. This will be sent to you in a follow up after we're all done here. We will send you a follow up email with the recording and all of that jazz. And then also this little checklist. You can kind of go through this checklist to evaluate your current processes. And if you are looking for a vendor, this is a great checklist to kind of go through and mark what they have and what they don't have, or what you currently have and what you don't have, to kind of help gauge your current programs. So, yeah, be on the lookout in the next couple of days for our follow up to come out so you can download this checklist and kind of have the recording to kind of go back and review some of the things that we went over. But with that being said, we now want to open it up for some question and answer. These can be very program specific, or these can be kind of broad. We're open to anything, best practices in the space right now. But feel free to start kind of dropping those questions in the chat.
Is what is the implementation to execution timeline? And the best answer for this is kind of that it varies, and how early you kind of get on the horse and get ready to do it versus how much of in a rush you are to do it. So if you were in a really big rush to do it, I would say at least 2 weeks, if not longer, just because we want to make sure that we test and have that have everything perfect and finalized before you present that to your organization, to your community. But typically the best kind of process is at least a month, because that gives you enough time to meet with the team, get your kind of your goals, get your form built out, get all your configuration set, and test. Testing a lot is really important to make sure that you have understood the applicant experience and have made it as best as possible. So it kind of just depends from event to event, how long it is, how complex it is. But we typically like to have at least a month of kind of cushion time. And then has there been any work in having AI assist with eligibility or evaluation? And the answer to that is yes. We are kind of in the process right now of getting AI integrated within our platform, but with that comes kind of a lot of research, testing, things like that, because we want to make sure that we are giving you all the best product and something that will be actually pretty useful. So something that we're working on is AI summarization, which is really helpful for the evaluation process, because if you have a lengthy evaluation and you want to do a first round, or maybe just some of the form isn't as important, we can enable that summarization part. Also with eligibility, we can have it kind of read through the form, again, kind of with that summarization of letting them know that it is that they're eligible or not. But then also we already do have that eligibility set up in the form. So where they can go through the form, answer a series of questions, and based on that, they either move through the form or they don't. So that kind of is already in place, not necessarily with AI, but with a really great process that works for a lot of our clients. Looks like we have another question. Are you able to migrate data from our previous application site onto Reviewer? And kind of the short answer to that is yes. It would need a little bit more context to fully answer, but submission wise, we do import a lot of submissions. So if you do kind of a rolling application where they only have to apply once every 3 years, for example, we can import past submissions into Reviewer. And then also, typically what we do when we onboard clients who have been using past application sites or PDFs, whatever that might be, we pretty much just take the exact form that they were using and insert it into Reviewer with our personalized kind of question types, things like that. And then make edits from there with things that could potentially be better. So the answer to that is yes.
Do we have any final questions?
How many users can be added as reviewers? There is not a limit to that. So kind of same with admin. A lot of people do come in and ask if there's a limit on how many admin can be added, how many reviewers can be added, and there's not a limit. So as many as you need to kind of run your process, you're good to go. Excuse me. And that does not come at an additional fee. Everyone gets as many reviewers and admin as they would like. Can there be more than one grant cycle running at the same time? Yes. So there's a couple different ways that you can do that. If they are very different kind of grant cycles, you are able to run them in 2 separate events. But also if you're running more than one grant in one event, you are able to kind of run a process where you're going to do one application for your 5 different grants. So yes, absolutely to that. It just kind of depends on how you want that to be set up and how similar they are.
But with that being said, thank you all for attending our webinar today.